Hello, my name is Mateo. So my question is, why did the disciples and James, his own brother, not trust in Jesus after seeing his miracles? Because I know Jesus prophesied his own resurrection, and you would think if they were around him the most and they saw him walking on water, it confuses me how they would then doubt him when he's saying, I'm going to resurrect, and then instead of trusting in that, they run away after he dies on the cross.
Why did Jesus' closest followers doubt him, even after witnessing miracles? Today, we tackle the mystery of the disciples' faith, doubt, and their transformation after the resurrection. Stay tuned.
Well, I don't know if you noticed, but throughout the Bible, whenever miracles are done, there's a whole group of people that don't believe. It's not just the disciples, right? Because we're fickle people. I mean, look at all the miracles that were done during the Exodus. And then Moses spends a few extra nights on the mountain, and suddenly they're worshiping the golden calf, and you're going, what? What's going on? Because miracles don't always have the intended effect. In fact, I submit to you, there are probably people in this room that you might not have seen something miraculous, but you saw something certainly providential and you knew God was in it. And 2 weeks later, you're still going, God, where are you? You forget, don't you? You're fickle. But the important thing is after he did rise from the dead, then they were steadfast because they had that. I mean, walking on water, okay, that's amazing. But somebody rising from the dead who claims he's going to do it and then he does it and then he starts doing more miracles, you go, okay, I'm convinced now.
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair. I think for me personally, I feel like if I saw someone walking on water in the middle of a sea, I feel like I'd probably put trust then. I'm not saying obviously as humans we are fickle. It's just, I guess it's hard for me to just believe that they saw those kinds of insane things and yet when he talked about resurrection, they're like, nah, dude.
Well, most of the time, I think they were pretty faithful. Although when they were threatened before the resurrection, like Peter, he chickened out. And a lot of us will say, oh, I would never do what Peter did. I wouldn't deny him. Yeah. You don't know what you do. I don't know what I do either, do you?
Yeah, that's fair. Thank you. And
right.
Real quick, last one. I know you were talking about a little bit about Islam and the differences between that and Christianity. I wanted to ask, I believe in Islam that they claim the miracle is that they saw Muhammad ascend into heaven. And so I was going to ask, kind of talking about, I don't believe that the disciples died for something that they believe was false. I think they clearly believe that Jesus resurrected. I just also see people, dying for Islam as well, and they claim to have seen that miracle. So
where do they claim to have seen that miracle? In the Quran or the Hadith?
I'm not sure which one it is. I'd have to do research. I just know that I believe that is a claim that they saw Muhammad ascend.
Muhammad says in the Quran, I don't do miracles, I'm just a plain warner. I just warn people that there's one God. Mm-hmm. The miracles attributed to Muhammad come 150 years to 200 years later. Mm-hmm. And they seem to me to contradict the Quran, because if Muhammad says, I don't do miracles, how are people coming along 200 years later saying, oh, Muhammad did this and Muhammad did that? And some of them, by the way, are obvious sort of rip-offs of the New Testament miracles. Like instead of turning water into wine, Muhammad turns water into milk, right? Instead of feeding 5,000, Muhammad feeds 50,000, And even many Muslims will say, yeah, these things are legendary. They're not true. So I think many of those miracles were attributed to him after Christians start saying, hey, your guy's a prophet? What miracles did he do? Well, he did this and he did that 200 years later. Not convincing. Look, I can see why people followed Muhammad. In fact, Jordan Peterson pointed this out when Jordan Peterson's always kind of coy about what he believes about Christianity and God and all this, but he did say this, there's one thing I'm absolutely certain of, the difference between Muhammad and Jesus. Muhammad was a warlord and Jesus wasn't.
I completely agree with that. I don't believe in Muhammad. I guess the question is more kind of are people willing to die for something that they believe, but that thing could be false?
Oh, sure. People do that all the time. I'm saying, but people will die for a lie they think is the truth. I don't think many people, if any, will die for a lie they know is a lie.
Yeah, I agree.
That's the difference. All right? All right, thank you.
Mateo raises a key issue. If Jesus' disciples and even his brother James saw him perform incredible miracles, like walking on water, why would they doubt his resurrection? It's important to understand that witnessing miracles does not automatically eliminate doubt or fear. Human nature is complex, and even extraordinary experiences do not always produce consistent faith. Consider Peter in Matthew 14:28-31, who briefly walks on water with Jesus, but quickly sinks when fear and doubt creep in. Human beings, even in the presence of divine acts, can be fickle and frail. Mark 9:24. I believe, help my unbelief. Throughout the Gospels, the disciples often misunderstand Jesus' mission and the true nature of his kingdom, expecting a political Messiah rather than a suffering servant. Mark 8:31-33. When Jesus was crucified, their hopes seemed shattered, leaving them disillusioned and fearful for their own lives. The turning point, however, was Jesus' resurrection. According to Acts 2:32-36, once the disciples witnessed the risen Christ, their fear transformed into unshakable courage. James, who had once doubted his brother, became a leader of the Jerusalem church. 1 Corinthians 15:7. The resurrection was not merely a miracle, it confirmed Jesus' identity as the Son of God and became the foundation of their unwavering faith and proclamation. Mateo acknowledges that humans can be inconsistent, yet he struggles with why such significant miracles did not completely solidify the disciples' faith. This is a common struggle for many believers. Even the Israelites, who witnessed the plagues in Egypt and the parting of the Red Sea, quickly turned to idolatry when Moses delayed on Mount Sinai, Exodus 32. Faith is not always strengthened by sight alone, but through trust, perseverance, and God's revelation over time, John 20:29. This truth extends to us today. Many people experience God's providence or feel his presence, but can still wrestle with doubts and fears. The disciples' humanity reminds us that faith is a journey, often tested by trials, doubts, and fear, yet ultimately strengthened by God's grace. Mateo compares the willingness of Christian disciples to die for their beliefs with Islamic martyrdom, questioning whether both can be equally sincere. The distinction lies in the disciples' first-hand experience. According to 1 Corinthians 15:3-8, the apostles claim to have personally seen and interacted with the risen Jesus. Their bold proclamation and willingness to endure persecution and death were rooted in their eyewitness testimony. In contrast, as noted in Islamic tradition, Muhammad himself claimed no miracles during his life, as seen in Surah 1790-93 of the Quran. Miraculous stories attributed to Muhammad arose in hadith compilations much later. This difference highlights that while people of many faiths may sincerely die for beliefs, the disciples' martyrdom stands unique in that they were eyewitnesses to the events they preached. Mateo's final question delves into human nature. Can people die for something they know to be a lie? While many may die for beliefs they hold sincerely, even if incorrect, it is nearly impossible for someone to willingly endure torture and death for what they know to be a fabrication. The disciples' conviction, demonstrated through their willingness to suffer and die, lends credibility to their claims of witnessing the resurrected Jesus, Acts 4:18-20. For more insights, consider reading The Case for Christ by Lee Strobel, The Resurrection of the Son of God by N.T. Wright, and Cold Case Christianity by J. Warner Wallace. If you enjoyed this discussion and want to explore deeper questions on faith, theology, and apologetics, check out our channel for more videos.